Well, good evening, Democrats.
Good evening.
My name is Phil Cornell. I'm an at-large committee man, Democratic State Committee. And this is the first planning meeting for the 2020 DC Democratic Party State Convention. I'm the co-chair along with the vice chair of the State Committee, Linda Gray. Throughout the country, most of the Democratic state committees have either annual or biennial state conventions. Sometimes there are special conventions held in states, particularly to choose statewide nominees for the Democratic ticket. I hope that what we are planning for April the 18th of 2020 will be the beginning of having regularly scheduled state conventions here in DC. Now, what is being planned for April the 18th is somewhat ambitious. Throughout the country, when the state parties have their conventions, sometimes it might be a 3-day event, starting say on a Friday evening and having party business on Saturday and Sunday. Some will have 2 days. What we're doing here in DC on April the 18th is indeed ambitious because we're planning to combine our state convention with national, with delegate selection to the national convention. So, given that we're doing a state convention, which hasn't happened in DC in quite a while, and we're combining with delegate selection, it is no exaggeration to say that this might be one of the largest gatherings of DC Democratic Party leaders and activists since home rule. So I want to thank you for volunteering to be a member of this committee, bring this energy to the committee. And as I said, we may be on course to have one of the largest gatherings, if not the largest gathering of DC Democrats since home rule. But before we get into the nuts and the bolts of the planning, I'd like to now have our vice chair of the party, then make remarks.
Okay.
You have to come. We're filming,
Okay.
so you have to come up for your close-up.
Good evening, everyone. Maybe I'll stand over here.
Can you see her?
Can you see me? Okay. All right, I'm Linda Gray, for those of you who don't know me. And again, as Phil stated, this is going to be a very time-consuming and hard-working endeavor. In order to make this happen, we're talking about doing a lot of work in a very short amount of time. I'll tell you what my biggest concerns are, because my focus is getting us to Milwaukee and getting us to Milwaukee ready as a delegation, ready to promote statehood, ready to support who our Democratic nominee is going to be. That in and of itself is a lot of work. So this particular project has to be one that is going to enable us to do some of those things. In other words, if it's going to be a money maker, then it needs to be a big money maker, because it's going to cost a lot of money to get to Milwaukee. It's going to cost us money to have an election. just to promote statehood because it's hot right now. We had our hearing, everybody's talking about it. We just had a resolution passed, with ASDC, which is the group that all chairs, vice chairs, and executive directors belong to with the DNC, our statehood resolution. So we have to keep this momentum going. This, again, this is no small project. And it needs everyone who signed up to be a part of it to actually be, in it and of it. So we're going to need participation, we're going to need people to show for these meetings, and we're going to need to be able to discuss exactly how we're going to pull off this convention, which I'm pretty excited about. But I don't want anybody to think that this isn't a lot of work. It's not a lot of work. Any questions so far for me? Okay. The components that I see that day is going to be the convention itself, which will consist of caucus meetings, possibly people who are running for office. I know that we would like to get some of the presidential candidates, but we do also have local races. Our caucus meetings to take place, our delegate selection, the election itself to take place. And in order to do some of those things, there's a souvenir booklet, and if we pattern ourselves after the New Hampshire convention, there's a souvenir booklet that can help us raise money. I will let you see, it's the blue one there, you can pass it around. That's my souvenir booklet, I'm not leaving it here tonight. But please feel free to look at it so that you can see what kind of ads are in it and who placed ads in the souvenir book. And possibly, it can be a big money maker. It depends on how aggressive we are in going out to get this. But this is Washington DC, which has a lot of business, which has a lot of labor and labor unions who should be donating money to this. And again, we do have local candidates who are running for office, and we have presidential candidates. So there is a pool of money to go out there and get if we're aggressive enough. And any money that we make will go towards, on the road to Milwaukee, to the things we need to do there. So I'm gonna stop here, and maybe that's where we can start crafting the conversation on how we want to structure this. I'm gonna turn it back over to the chair, but, that's my take on it, and feel free to have a discussion with me anytime.
Then turning it over to the chairs, the co-chair. Now we can have introductions from Linda and myself. Introduce. Claudette, for you.
Hi, I'm Claudette David. I am the Executive Director of the DC Democratic Party. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Ethan Arnheim. I live in Ward 1. I'm the recording secretary for the Ward 1 Dems. I'm excited to.
Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline Silva. I also live in Ward 1, but this is like my first meeting thing, so I'm not a part of anything else.
Andrew McCarthy Clark, Ward 6, my first name.
That's Elgato. Just here to learn. It's my first meeting, so just want to help support in any way that I can.
Hey, Tony Duggar, Ward 7 Dems.
Hugh Allen, Ward 3 member.
Okay, I'm James Wright, Washington Informer newspaper.
Can we give you a quote?
Linda Gray, Vice Chair of the DC Democratic State Committee, and I live in Ward 4.
I'm Pamela Gomez, and I participate in the Ward 6 Dems.
Chuck Berger, Ward 6 Dems, chair.
Matt LaFortune, Ward 6.
Dexter Williams, I'm running the Ward 7 committee.
Bo Shuff, I live in Ward 6.
and where someone wants
We had 43 people who signed up for this committee, and that's a good start. You know, we're now in the holiday season, so a turnout like this is excellent because your people are really busy, parties, etc. So I really want to thank you for coming this evening and promise that we will not go past 8:30. There are four basic things that we want to do in our convention on April the 18th, and that is to adopt a platform so that when people go to the DC Democratic Party website, they will know what our party stands for. We voted, the state committee voted to reform the process where 3 members of the Electoral College are chosen. Next year, it will be a competitive process, and they will be elected at the state convention. We will also elect national convention delegates at the state convention on April the 18th, and also we will hold a constituent caucus meetings. We go to John, you want to introduce yourself?
John Capozzi, Ward 7.
Okay.
Environmental Committee of the State Committee.
All right. Let's first of all talk about the Electoral College candidate process. This was approved by the state committee at a vote, I guess that was 2 meetings ago. And these are recommendations, by the way. These are just recommendations. It's up to this committee this evening to approve recommendations that we will pass on to the executive committee of the Democratic State Committee, which will have to approve anything that we propose. What I'm proposing for the Electoral College candidate process is that we require a $500 filing fee or 400 signatures of Democrats. This is patterned after the process that is used for presidential candidates every 4 years. For them to get on the ballot here in the District of Columbia, they have 2 options. They can either pay, I believe it was $2,000 to get on the ballot, or they can go out and get signatures. I think it's what, 1,200, or it was 1,000, or they can do both. By making the process for Electoral College candidates competitive, hopefully they'll bring more energy to the party, to the convention. Hopefully those candidates that are running for the Electoral College will be emphasizing statehood. And also, let's keep in mind, to be a member of the Electoral College takes all of what, maybe 5 minutes of work. They meet at the John Wilson Building to cast their votes, and that's it. But what we're doing is making it competitive, and as I say, bringing more energy to the party. Hopefully, the elections for these Electoral College candidates will be conducted by voting machines, and that we can also use the voting machines for national delegate selection, so that we won't actually see the rather ancient process with the marks on the board, which we go through practically everywhere throughout the city. I think, Linda, you've been exploring.
Yeah, but I haven't heard back from them yet.
Okay. Are there any of you who are conversant about voting voting machines and whether there's a possibility that we can get them for our state convention?
I have no idea.
You have no
You're
idea?
staring at me like I should know the answer.
Well, I mean,
You usually have all the answers.
I know that college campuses use them for some of the student assembly elections.
Yeah.
So perhaps I am spitballing, but perhaps there's like a way to borrow them from or rent them from Georgetown or GW, I mean.
okay.
Or the Board of Elections, I don't know what their security protocols are.
Because we've never, but to my knowledge, I've never seen Democratic State Committee use voting machines for practically any of our intra-party type of elections. And we want it to, this whole process to go fast. And if we have at least 1,000 people show up to vote for delegates that day, for National Convention delegates, we will still be taking quite a while marking. So, who wants to explore finding out, or rather finding out how, if we can get these machines? You want to do it, Bob?
Sure.
Okay.
Apparently I have been volunteered.
Any comments about this electoral college process? What do you think? Good.
I guess, you know, just to me, simplifying this is always better. So when it says 50 per ward as opposed to 400 signatures, I guess I would just take that out, because it's not that you don't want to get them all from one ward. It's just that the idea that you're going to count them up and then separate it by ward and then figure out how to do that. I mean, that just would be a real intricate process, whereas if you can count 400 signatures, you either have them or you don't. And then I'm not as, I don't understand the 100 delegates per ward part.
Okay, that's
That's a crime.
That's for the state convention. In terms of the delegations, each ward would have 100 delegates.
Okay.
For the state convention. Now, Committeeman Chuck Berger feels that the 100 figure is too high. I know that for some wards, that
I
is
stand corrected, I thought it was extremely,
ambitious.
mildly ambitious.
Okay, all right.
I don't want to dampen the
but-
spirit of them.
My only question is, so any Democrat who shows up can vote for the elector part?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that was the only part. But at the 50 board, I just feel that makes it difficult for us in terms of the process of doing it. I guess I would also throw in, if you're gonna spend $500, you should get an ad, because I do like this program that people have from New Hampshire, and I'd love to see that if people are gonna actually run for this, that at least they get something mentioned here. So anyway, I don't know if everybody's seen this, it's just messing around, but to me, it would make sense to give them something here where they're money.
So you're saying that with the $500 fee would come an ad?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind giving to the people who get 400 signatures either, just because that's a lot of
Yeah,
signatures.
I think when you ever talk about money, you just have to worry about the discriminatory nature
Yeah.
of it. So
Well,
I think
just-
that's good to put everybody in the ad, but it's paid for by the 500 pool.
Great.
We haven't set any type of rate for the souvenir booklet. That's going to be coming up later, but we have to form a souvenir booklet subcommittee. But we're raising money. Hopefully, the $500 is not going to be a full page ad.
Whatever, I
Okay, but
give them, I just
well
give them
taken.
something. I mean,
Okay.
Do we have any idea, ballpark, how many people would actually run, either between the $500 and 400 signatures?
it's never been done before.
This has never been done before. The electoral, all three electors have usually been just unilaterally and arbitrarily chosen by our party chair. And it's been usually folks who have been involved in the Democratic Party for many years. But,
In the bylaws, I believe it says says that the electors are chosen in consultation with the mayor.
With the mayor?
So I'm wondering, has the mayor's office been approached about this idea?
You wouldn't know this.
Not to my knowledge.
And, yeah, I did send an email to Chairman Charles asking him if, he had explored any, concerns about this, but he's gonna be late, we'll find out. Bo, do you anticipate there being a problem? You think the mayor will not like this process?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I swear.
And I don't even know if that's ever happened in the past. If the chair of the Democratic Party even consulted with the mayor, just picked them and sent the names to the DNC, so it's hard to know what's happened previously.
All right, now, in terms of the number of delegates per ward, and by the way, the convention is going to be at the Walter Washington Convention Center. I think where is that? Well, when Chairman Charles gets here, he can tell us whether the contract has been signed, but that's my understanding. We will have the second floor of, the entire second floor of the convention center. The largest room on the second floor seats 796 people. Therefore, my recommendation of 100 delegates per ward needs to be modified. It does need to be lowered because we want enough seating for not only all of the credentialed delegates per ward, but we also want to have some seating for guests type of thing. So I would now like to hear recommendations as to how many delegates do you think should be chosen from each ward?
Can I just ask a point of information? I'm sorry, I'm trying to look up some voter information here, but on the delegates, you mentioned credentialed delegates. What is that? What is a credentialed delegate, or what right do they have that others that don't walk in off the street to vote?
Well, they have to be chosen to be delegates to the convention. There are certain folks who will be automatic delegates to the convention. Members of the Democratic State Committee, public elected officials who are Democrats, with the exception of ANCs. And then it will be up to each ward to determine how it wants to fill out its delegation. I think most wards will probably choose to have their officers, their precinct captains, they have them, the chairs of their standing committees.
So each ward will credential a set amount of,
Right.
the same, each one will have an equal amount of delegates to provide credentials, and
Yes.
these credentialed delegates will have a voting right on the
Yes.
platform and the other issues.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And if a certain ward didn't credential up to whatever the amount is, 90, 80, if we're not doing 100, they just don't have as many people there.
They just don't have as many people. There are certain wards where this is not going to be a problem at all, like Ward 3 Democrats, the way that they're structured, they already have 100 representatives. There are some other wards, it may be a bit more difficult to get to that. But I'm just asking now, what figure do you think that we should shoot for as the goal? Chuck, you had concerns about this. What number do you recommend?
Well, it is a matter, I think for anything, we're gonna have a healthy discussion and a healthy group. I don't think there's any logistics of it. I think Ward 3, depending if you're retired or have a job, depending how your organization is, we'll probably have different amounts of delegates. I would think for those delegates like Ward 3 and other wards that think that they can get 75, I don't think they should be deprived. I think maybe in 6, we might have a difficulty getting 75, but I don't have a problem if we show up with 50. but it allows other wards to have 75, because the more the merrier.
Okay, so once again, should we stick with the 100 or should we lower it to 80?
I would say 80 is fine.
80, okay, what's the consensus? Does it sound good?
Can I, before we move further on this,
Mhm.
one of the ways that, if we're modeling after New Hampshire, which is what I heard Vice Chair Gray say, one of the ways that they were profitable on their event was the selling of skyboxes and suites in their arena, and the oversaturation of non-delegates to the convention. For example, interested organizations, et cetera, sent people. I'm concerned that if we are limiting ourselves to a room that holds 796 and we're getting 680 of those from delegates from, I think my math is right, from the various wards, that we don't have enough space to then use as a revenue generator, if that's the goal of the convention, is to generate revenue for Milwaukee. So I don't know if there are alternate spaces within the convention center or alternate venues if that contract hasn't been signed that could be pursued or looked at least.
Well,
You're gonna do
we've
a
been,
damn job, aren't you?
we've been joined by our party chairman, Charles Wilson. Your welcoming remarks, and you can also answer questions.
So, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you all for coming out on a cold night. Excited about this event. Excited about the energy that Philip and Linda are going to bring to leading us in this effort. It is going to be an all hands on deck plus more to make it a successful event, because as you know, it's not just a convention, it's a delegate selection process as well. As far as answering your question, so this is not the only space that we've considered. The other spaces we've considered pretty much equal in cost. And there's pluses and minuses to both. So the plus of having it at the convention center is that it will all be on one floor, in one building, on the second floor of the convention center. We've looked at UDC as well, having it at the auditorium and then using the student center. Of course, that's two separate buildings, and having people walk from one to another and not, being considerate of the weather. Because if you remember the delegate selection process last year, it rained all day. So we're taking everything into consideration to make a final decision. So that's kind of where we are.
Are there other spaces within the convention center that are larger that we could utilize perhaps?
We can ask, we just asked them like, what was the space we used 4 years ago? And they gave us a quote on what was used 4 years ago. So that's kind of how we got here.
But it isn't locked in stone yet.
As of next week, it will be. Okay. But yeah. I mean, and part of this is like, we're finalizing our delegate selection plan like tomorrow. And all that information goes into that plan, so we have to make decisions sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything?
No, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah.
And thanks for your help.
I was just thinking, I think Bud would make a good point there. If there are ancillary groups that want to be part of the event, but aren't floor voting delegates, they might want to be in the same room. And I guess that would be a definite beginning. I don't think we're gonna have a big problem the first time around. I think doing this at first, but we should leave that option there. And I think that's just balance between the cost of the space at this stage. But it would be really great if we had at least, even if we had another room or something that would tie in supporting groups that were supporting us, that they could be engaged.
Yeah, I mean, the folks that we're gonna ask for money are gonna want something for their money.
Yeah.
And typically that's seats in the room and exposure to the attendees. And so if there's no space in the room itself for that, those money asks are just gonna be really hard.
Can
So
they-
that's my concern.
Can they set up a booth outside, something like that?
I think anything is on the table.
Or have a hospitality?
A hospitality suite would be probably, at least at this stage, the first one would probably, or where the food's served, I don't know if you're having a social engagement for outside the box lunches.
That's totally, if we go to the convention center, the box lunches are out. Because if we use the convention center, we are required to use all of their vendors. And they're not cheap. So, to be honest about it, this would be basically a brown bag state convention. People would be asked to basically bring their own lunches, or else they can buy food from the concessions, because we cannot afford to
Even though
contract
I'm a
with the
senior
vendor.
now, and Bob King will probably give me a little box lunch on the bus. But, I think it's an important aspect to look at that with, we should have something there beyond. It would be nice, I don't know budget wise, but maybe just segue into that. We're talking about seniors, another group is talking about having a senior conference to promote Get Out the Vote for Seniors. And in this event, I don't think we want to exclude seniors from actively participating as delegates. And since there are a number of senior residences throughout the city, there should be some coordination for each ward to at least have some outreach or commitment where a portion of their delegation is represented by in senior housing, either be it villages or residential structures. So I'm just throwing that out. But then I go back to the lunches, because they'll want something.
Yeah, I mean, part of this process is we have to raise money.
That's right, yeah.
To make this what we want it to be, so between now and then, regardless of where we have it, we're gonna have to raise money to make this happen.
That's big.
Well, what I'm saying is if we go to the convention center, we have to use their food vendor, which is not cheap. So,
I just consider that a large negative.
I agree with you, but that's one of the downsides of using the convention centers, that you have to use all of their vendors, you know, like from the signage to the food, et cetera. So, but that's something that I guess the executive committee will work out.
Yep.
All right. And you're right, in terms of you, of course, you want each ward to have a good representation of senior citizens as well as young people. It'll be up to each ward how it fills out its delegation of 80. That was the consensus now, right? It will be shooting for 80 persons per ward, which means there will be 560 voting delegates to our state convention. And another thing, I'll get you in a second, James. Another thing is that we have to decide or as to whether or not we want to recommend that if there are high school whether we will have voting high school members, students as members of the delegation. And I think we need to vote on that recommendation this evening. Yeah, Committeeman Sidnall.
So, as I understand it, going back to food, people can bring food in, correct?
Yes.
So if something was established to get food outside the convention, it wouldn't go against what the convention rules are for bringing food in, correct?
That's my understanding.
We'll verify that.
Yeah.
Say again.
Individuals.
Well, they say we can bring in brown bags, right?
We'll confirm all that information.
Just throwing something out there. You follow me, right?
As a matter of fact, why don't we deal with the high school situation right now? We want to really include high school students in this convention. We want to give them an opportunity to come as volunteers so that they can actually get community service hours. But also, we need to make a vote on a recommendation this evening as to whether or not we recommend to the state committee's executive committee that high school students can be voting members of the ward delegations. Discussion?
So you consider 9 through 12 grades?
Yes,
Ninth grade,
high
10th
school.
I know, that's the reason I'm going.
Yeah.
So 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade.
High school.
Okay.
High school.
So Julie and I are the chairs of high school Dems.
Yes.
And 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, so 10, 11, and 12th graders are and can be registered to vote as Democrats. So maybe that's something important to consider. I think, a lot of kids might want to come out and volunteer, but like the idea of kind of being able to help make change might, push them more.
Also, the bill enabling 16-year-olds to vote is kind of at a stalemate for DC, but it's definitely something we've been pushing for, and it's something that seems probable in the near future.
I would support it if only to help each ward get up to their 80 members. You know, if we are still thinking that not every ward would be able to get all 80 slots filled, I mean, high school students there to help make up the numbers certainly wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, we have chapters in 6 different wards, so I don't know, I mean, I feel like that.
We have chapters in 6 wards, so.
Wanda?
Yeah, I certainly would support it. I would even go far enough to say we should do a percentage of 10% of the 80 and get the students involved.
I know, in our Ward 8, there were 5 students from Thurgood Marshall Academy who went to the New Hampshire State Convention. Of course, we would want them attending their hometown convention. So you're proposing that there be a goal for each ward delegation for a number of high school students? Should that be a number, or should it be
10%, so that would be 8 per ward,
or
something to consider.
8th ward? Thinking, Chuck?
I'm not a proponent of 16-year-olds voting in the district, but I do see as we're building an organization, we're the Democratic Party, I think we can have a broader feel for it. I think it is very important that we empower under voting age to be involved in the party machinery itself, so I don't have a problem. I would probably suggest 5. I mean, that would be the only thing I would pick, because once again, I don't want to discourage or if everyone feels that 10 is a proper weight. I'm just concerned we have a broad representation, that we do get actual voting members engaged, that is a priority. So 5 or 8, I don't have a big problem with it.
Did I hear you correctly, that 16-year-olds can register?
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah,
16 and I'm.
Okay, I was unaware, sorry.
Yeah.
It may, to me then, it would make sense that we don't necessarily open up to all of high school, because if we're going to have a serious process, including verification of voter eligibility, et cetera, the fact that they can be registered Democrats at 16 makes sense to me, and that perhaps our high school goals should be focused on 16 to 18-year-olds, and that we look at 9th and 10th grade as pages, volunteers, and assistants of some level, so that we can still engage them. But voting members should start where the law starts, I feel. And that way we have some way to verify that they're registered Democrats. Through the same voting rolls that we do, we don't treat anybody differently then.
That could also encourage people to register if they're 16.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. And that we set a goal, I don't think a quota, like you have to have 8, but a goal like we do all the other goals with delegations to all the conventions, be whatever we decide the number should be.
Also, some wards have more high schools than other wards. I think that Wanda's recommendation for a goal is good, and that maybe we could tweak that and ask each ward to at least try to identify at least 2 students per high school. You know, like a male and female what about that?
That's pretty hard. That's in the weeds.
That's in the weeds?
Yeah,
That's
just.
too much? Okay.
Would students be where they live or where they go to school?
Where they live.
Where they live.
I want to clarify.
Yeah, but to be a delegate to the state convention, you have to be chosen by your ward organization. So
Okay, so it's
it's
where you
gotta be
live.
where you live.
Right, and I guess since whether people agree or disagree with 16-year-olds voting in city elections, the fact is that they're voting on the electors and they're voting on the platform, so it would be a way to see how serious people are, and then, you know, obviously, people can make their own decisions after that in terms of supporting 60-year-olds voting in state elections, but I think this is a great process because, you know, it's a little bit different in terms of the responsibility level, but it's the same thing where they have to register, they have to show up, and they have to figure out what they're gonna do, and I think that's what everybody needs to do, but the fact is that it'd be nice to get people who are younger involved that way.
And could we ask, our high school Democrats are, they're part of the Young Democrats.
No.
We have a
Nationally, I
connected
thought.
charter.
I thought nationally you were connected. Okay, well, in any regard, this might be something, as far as having pages, I think that's all a really exciting idea, but I don't know how much each of the wards can manage that. Would that be something you could reach out within your organization and take that on for each ward?
Yeah, I mean, how many ballpark do you think?
Well, I don't, that would be the group, but that could be something you could manage and work on each ward to get.
Yeah. Also, Chuck, did you mention earlier with like a senior caucus, kind of? You were talking about,
Yeah, there's a group getting together, some of the ward, to have like a major senior event.
okay,
Citywide.
sorry, I was just, I thought that was interesting with like age, you know, high school could maybe do something similar, and we could, but that's separate of this.
Okay, let me make sure that I'm clear on this. It is the consensus of this planning committee, that 16-year-old high school students will be eligible to be voting delegates to the state convention. Yes.
If registered.
Okay.
Registered Democrats.
No.
If,
Do 16-year-olds vote in city elections?
no.
No.
Okay.
They just register,
And
they can
I-
register.
Okay, and I think that's where I'm having a little bit of a problem. I want to see them involved. I do want to see them involved, I do want to see them, as pages. And maybe even to have, a high school Dems caucus. But if they don't vote in city elections, it's a little problematic for me at this point.
Okay, so how do we deal with this now? There are some who, this is a state convention, yes, you.
I was just gonna say, I understand Linda's point here, but this is a state convention, this is a little bit of, this is not a city election, right?
Right.
Okay, so I think that could be a distinction, and then thinking about, well, inviting high school students at the levels that we may think would participate, and kind of what John said about picking someone or registering and so forth, you go through the process that the other people are going through. I think that's a plus.
Okay. I think, Linda, we're gonna have to have an up and down vote on this.
That's
Did you
fine.
discuss it? Dan?
So, just so I'm clear, so 16-year-olds can register as Democrats, but are they allowed to vote on anything or just register? And then my follow-up question is, you all say you're working on an initiative that's kind of stopped or not moving
Yeah, so
forward?
like there's Vote 16 DC, which is like a district-wide initiative. I think because the city council was like hearing about 16-year-olds being able to vote, and it's kind of stalled right now.
It passed committee, but it hasn't,
So they can vote in city elections?
So not yet, I think that's what.
I mean, but that's the
Yeah,
intent.
that's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the intent. So what can a 16-year-old registered Democrat do now?
so what our organization focuses on is like, how can we, even though we're disenfranchised, still kind of push what we think is like the right thing in politics. So like canvassing, stuff like that, and like, you know, I think voting isn't the only impact you can have on an election.
Agreed. No, but no, my question is, I'm 16.
Yeah.
Can or cannot not vote if I'm registered?
No.
Okay, so what's my incentive to register?
I think we may be creating an incentive.
Yeah.
That's my point. That's the point I'm trying to get to, is why it's important
Yeah.
that we allow this
Yeah.
process to move forward.
Yeah.
To help what you're trying to accomplish and show numbers to the council to say, hey, we need, this is why this is important, because we have another demographic that understands the importance of the process.
Okay, so
Could I put a motion on the floor?
certainly.
I put a motion on the floor in order for party health and interaction and to create an active party. The motion is that at our state party convention, according to the 80 delegates per ward, that at most, at a maximum of 8 we're talking about over 16 to
16 to 17-year-olds.
16 to 17-year-olds may be part of the delegation and have voting rights at the convention. So.
A second.
Can I offer an amendment to your motion?
Sure.
I think you said maximum?
Or not more than.
I would like to amend that to remove the maximum. I think that if we're gonna consider 16 to 18-year-olds as a vibrant, needed part of our party, that they should be free to run for a delegation slot just like anyone else in the city. And I would actually prefer we set a floor instead of a ceiling, that we set a goal of 10% of the delegation being made up of young people.
10% of the ward delegation be, is that what?
And a goal, yeah, and we don't, I don't think we should treat 16 to 18-year-olds any differently in how we are approaching our delegations. A number of municipalities have moved to 16-year-old voting across the country. And as Democrats, we are the progressive voice in this country for how do we enfranchise more people, especially as DC Democrats who deal with enfranchisement on literally a daily basis. I think that we should be expanding our electorate as much as possible. So I would like to see us treat 16 to 18-year-old registered Democrats just as we treat 18 to 900-year-old registered Democrats. And just as we identify constituencies that are an important voice to participate, we set a goal for that participation. So I would like to modify the motion that we treat 16 to 18-year-old registered Democrats, or that we credential anyone who is a registered Democrat, and that includes 16-year-olds in the district. We credential anyone who runs and qualifies as a delegate, and that each board should have a goal of 10% of that being young person. I would maybe idea that the young person definition could be 16 to 21. So that we're going after young people at both high school and college level, but that would be my modification to your motion in the form of an amendment.
Just a point of information. The delegates per ward, those delegates are determined by the ward's executive committee or the ward's?
There are, members of the Democratic State Committee are automatic voting members of the, to the state convention. So they will have their seats in their respective ward. Then it's up to the ward organizations to choose the process for filling out.
So we could all have a different process
Yes.
of doing that. So it's not stated that the executive committee would do it. It would be.
It's up to the ward.
Would it be the chair would be the one that could determine who the delegates are, or?
I hope that's not the situation.
Well, no, I hope there aren't a number of situations.
Yeah,
That's
but,
why I'm asking.
yeah, that at least the executive committee of each ward organization would come up with a process for how to get to the 80 delegates.
That's sort of scary to me.
Can we?
Well, see, now there's another way of doing it, in terms of actually mandating, that there be certain automatic delegates, and they could be each ward, it could be the members of the state committee, the officers of the ward organization, the chairs of the standing committees of the ward organizations, the precinct representatives, if the wards have precinct representatives. We could actually make that recommendation to mandate that those people be automatic members of the state convention. Because if the state convention is going to be a gathering of the Democratic Party leadership.
Yeah, I understand, but this, this is a critical thing of delegate selection, and I see a huge flaw in this because we don't even have a way to select the 80 delegates we have. There's not any recommendation, or who could say one ward didn't properly do it, or the way they did it was prejudice, and it just creates a lot of, I think, challenges. I would accept that, I mean, again, I'll state I'm not a 16 for the general vote, but I do think it's important that their participation occur in the party. That's where I'm at right now, so I'll accept your amendment, but with the thing that the recommendation is 10% of the delegation should be of that age.
Wait. Okay, let me make sure that I'm clear. Okay, if you write it down. please, for, for a record. If it's my understanding now that, it will be, if we vote on, if that passes, it is the consensus of this group, that, there be a goal of at least 10% of each ward's delegation consists of high school students 16 years or older.
To serve as delegates.
To serve as delegates,
It's
as
a
voting
convention
delegates
from their ward.
from their ward. Is that?
Yeah, let me state it clearly, or try to, on one attempt. I believe that, for purposes of seating delegates, we should treat all registered Democrats in the District of Columbia the same, in that 16 and 17-year-olds who are registered Democrats should be treated the same as all other potential delegates. In addition, there should be a goal of 10% of the delegation from each ward be comprised of young persons. And I would say 16 to 21, because I think that we need to activate both high school and college students. That's the notion.
Young Democrats.
Young.
College Democrats could be 80 years old.
Fair.
Okay, so you're talking about high school and young.
16 to 21 years old.
I might be mistaken, but according to the delegate selection plan, I think we already have a category for young Democrats, and it's under 35, right?
That's the national. That's for national convention delegates.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why I said young persons in my young
Yeah,
Democrats.
we're different in terms of our state.
Without saying youth, or the kids, sorry, trying not to.
So, Bo, am I incorrect? I'm trying to simplify the situation here, or at least.
Any registered Democrat?
Any registered Democrat, 16 years or older can be a delegate to the state convention, and that each ward organization is asked to attempt to 10% of its delegation be high school students.
Be age 16 to 21.
16 to 21. 16 to 21.
And to confirm, that's if the student lives in DC, not if they go to school.
Oh, yeah.
No, they have to be a resident.
Yeah, but they have to be a resident, but do they have to also attend school in DC?
No, they have to be a registered DC.
Okay, it's just registered.
Yeah, just registered.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's what I thought so.
So DC residents who are registered that are young, fly in from their college, they can vote and they can be part, they can be a delegate.
If they want to.
So I'm on board with the first part. I think that if you're a registered Democrat in DC, regardless of your age, 16 and up, you should be able to be a delegate. The part that I guess I'm not entirely sure about the second part, privileging one group and having a quota of.
It's not a quota, it's a
not a
goal.
quota.
It's a goal, right, but, I mean, it seems like there's other groups that we also want to have goals for. Latinos have been typically underrepresented in DC politics. We might want to have a goal for them too, or there are other groups that we could have goals for. It seems like when we go down the road, it's sort of privileging one group over another.
Well, let's clarify, it's absolutely not privileging anyone, especially because I believe that there are 18 to 21-year-olds who are both Latino and 18 to 21. I can fill multiple slots. The goal is to increase our outreach by setting goals to a targeted audience that has been left behind before, which is where the goals that exist in literally all of our documents for all of our delegations come from. Like, we have goals around, we have racial and gender and sexual orientation goals in the national selection process. We have goals in equal representation in everything that the party does. And so I don't think, I would absolutely not put it as privilege, more as the opposite, is to end the privilege of being able-bodied and wealthy and be able to do this on a Saturday.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things maybe, flipping through here, New Hampshire has various groups that they, I guess, are trying to get more participation out of.
Right.
I don't think there's one for youth, but there's one for like disabled individuals. Are we gonna have the conversation around other groups that we want to get more participation out of?
May I address that? When, in terms of, well, the next slide will be more detailed. When we, as part of the state convention, we would like to propose that we have the meetings of the caucuses, the various caucuses that are listed in our governing documents. LGBTQ, women, disabled, veterans, veterans, they're all there, seniors. So, that we hope that will be a part of the convention.
I think your point's well taken. I think one thing with youth is it covers a lot of the different categories, because it's an age and everybody has, so it takes care of some of that. But I would really, in consideration of that point and the lack of understanding on how these delegates are picked, I would ask that the executive committee or the state committee set out guidelines on how each ward could, suggestion on how delegates could be selected, and include in that, mention the other groups and not quotas, like I said, but recommended percentages to make sure that we get as much, as broad a range of delegates as possible. But I really would like to see that reinforced, that there are other groups.
Right.
But secondly, I would also stress that we all should be picking our delegates in somewhat the same fashion.
Yes.
That's very important, I think, to the integrity of the convention. And I think that when it comes down and somebody's there with 10 members, because they made it a little harder to get recommended as opposed to somebody I picked up at the bus station. I just think it's very important that we get some direction for each of the ward organizations.
Well, once again, I'd like to reiterate my proposal as far as capturing the DC Democratic Party leadership in the delegations there. I would propose that we mandate that each ward delegation must include its officers, its elected officers, the chairs of the standing committees, their precinct representatives, if they have them. And then it's up to.
I have no problem with that. Okay, well, after we're done with that 10 people or 15 people, we still have 65, but I do want to vote on the motion, but I'll vote for the motion, of course, but I do think that this motion has to be captured and having some direction from the executive.
Can we just restate the motion before we vote?
Oh, I think we all know.
Can I speak to,
Yes.
Chuck's point? I agree with Chuck. And one of the main reasons I agree with Chuck is this meeting right here. I have a concern about buy-in of any processes or any decisions that we make. Because if I look around the room, I believe Chuck is the only board chair present. And so, I mean, it really is going to depend on everybody having the same understanding when these decisions are made, so that whatever the work is going to be carried out. So I agree, because at least in the executive committee, more chairs are present. And maybe we can get all chairs to be present, because everybody needs to hear the same thing at the same time, the same way.
By the way, Linda, the ward chairs were asked to designate representatives to sit on this committee. And I'm glad that Chuck came, but the other ward chairs did designate people.
And I understand that, but when it comes down to the work, you know good well you're gonna have to coordinate a lot with ward chairs. Because ward chairs will be the ones at the executive meetings and not their designees per se. So they're still gonna have to hear the same thing the same way, so that we're clear.
Okay. Well, Chuck, you want the motion that we are to vote on?
Motion with amendment.
With the amendment.
Call the vote.
You have this written down? Is this the one about this is the one stating that?
His was much more flowery than mine, so we take this.
That all registered DC Democrats are eligible to be delegates to the state convention, and that the convention establish a goal of 10% of the delegates be represented by persons 16 to 21 years old.
Is it clear to everyone? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions, it's unanimous. Okay, now, let's go to the runner's show. I want you to keep in mind that many of or rather most of the presidential candidates have been attending state conventions throughout the country. And most states do have either annual or biennial conventions, so they were able to get the invitations out to the candidates early part of this year. As soon as we have locked down the venue, we will be sending out invitations to the presidential candidates to come to our state convention. I know it may be a little difficult in terms of all being late, but and then another thing is that we don't know exactly how many presidential candidates that will still be around once you get to our convention. When is Super Tuesday? March, the 3rd, I believe?
Yes.
That will, the Super Tuesday primary should seriously win out a number of candidates. But this is a proposed run of show. These times are in no way carved into concrete because we need to also find out what's the proposed schedule for delegate selection. But these are certain things that I'm recommending that we have. Pick up credentials, and by the way, I know that most of us who have gone to conventions, my credentials here. Yes, isn't that here? Most of us who have gone to conventions are used to seeing this one with
chair, right away.
What? For those of us who've attended conventions, normally this is what the credentials look like. These are my credentials as a national convention delegate, the convention in 2004 in Boston. I'm suggesting that we not do this because we can cut costs. And what I would recommend in terms of how we identify our credential delegates, that it could be like going to the club, where we could do a red and white thing like this, DC Democratic State Convention 2020, who knows, people might actually use this to accessorize their outfits in the future. But I know this is a parenthetical point, but for those of us who, some of you may still want to have this traditional type of credentialing with the lanyards and everything, I think we shoot for this. But anyway, they would pick up their credentials and have continental breakfast. Then we would have formalities from 9 to 10, presentation of colors, hopefully an high school ROTC group, Pledge of Allegiance, National Anthem, the formalities. Then we would have the speeches or videos by the presidential candidates. We have to make a recommendation as to whether or not we will permit a presidential candidate to designate a surrogate to speak to the convention. The 10:30 to 12, that should have been deleted because I know Bo actually pulled my coat on that one. We're going to have separate delegate caucuses for each of the presidential candidates, so that recommendation is not operable. Then we would have the meeting of the constituent groups, the caucuses. We would vote on the platform. As you can see, we also have citywide candidates on our local ballot, and this would give an opportunity for them to speak to the convention. And then we could have the closing plenary session. Please keep in mind that folks will be voting during the day. There will be the voting machines for the national delegate candidates, and also for the electoral college candidates. Comments about the run of show?
You had mentioned in a previous.
Also, please mention, state your name, so everyone.
I'm Pamela Gomez. I
Okay.
just have a question. I saw on a previous screen that you had mentioned a keynote speaker.
Right.
Would that be included in this round of the show? And if so, I'm curious to know who were you thinking of? Who did you have in mind for a keynote speaker?
Excuse me, let me see, I don't pay for the convention. I was just basically putting something together to present to the state committee. Most conventions have keynote speakers, so I was just being very typical. I had no one in particular. It's up to this committee as to whether or not we want to recommend that there even be a keynote speaker.
I saw your note up there and I started to think about who I would love to sit and listen to give a speech.
What's your recommendation?
Is either Michelle or Barack Obama registered in
That would be
DC?
fabulous.
Um,
Okay. Do you have her on speed dial?
I don't, but those would be people, but somebody with star quality like that would be somebody who would attract a lot of people to come to the convention.
Or Donna Brazil type.
Yes,
Okay.
Donna Brazil, would agree.
Right. So first of all, let me get a consensus. Is it a consensus of this group that we want to have a keynote speaker for our state convention? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, then, in terms of our wish list, Chairman Charles, can you contact the Obamas and ask them if they?
I thought when somebody raised a question, they get put in charge of it, or is that just me? Because I think we have our keynote recruitment person, that's just volunteered.
Okay. Work with Charles so that the invitation can be on party letterhead. But I would assume that our first choice would be Michelle Obama, then maybe her husband, or you said Donna Brazil would be excellent.
Other former Democratic presidents.
Does it have to be a DC resident?
No, not for the convention. That might be a situation if we can't get the Obamas. There may be a presidential candidate who says, I'm going to come to the convention.
I
And
would
if there's
recommend
only
not
one,
having a presidential candidate. I would recommend not having a presidential
you don't want a presidential
Yeah, it
candidate.
should be someone who's running.
Because
No,
it makes it
okay.
look like maybe one of the previous ones that's no longer a candidate.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
a group.
Kamala Harris isn't running
Yes,
anymore.
That's a large group of people.
Totally
there.
thinking.
Mhm.
Stacey
Stacey
Abrams.
Abrams.
Oh my.
Yeah, Kamala or Stacey would
Yeah.
be great.
We didn't say it.
I like it. Stacey Abrams will be.
Of course, he's in,
Well, so we had years ago, who I think is popular still.
so Pamela, you're going to handle the keynote invitation?
Yes, I
You
will,
work with
I will
Charles?
try to find somebody with star power. If you guys will send me your suggestion for Stacey
Okay.
Abrams, great.
Right.
I'd love to have more suggestions.
Keep in mind, April the 18th is pretty much right around the corner. And we're kind of late starting, but hopefully. But you're gonna go for the Obamas first, right?
Yes.
Hey, I think it's terrific. So when we meet next month, again, I guess maybe we will have a keynote speaker. And if we can't get, like the Obamas or Stacey Abrams or Donna Brazil, something like that, we may have to look right here in DC. I would say one of our former state committee chairmen is now a media personality. You know what I'm talking about? A. Scott Bolden. He's not even on Fox. That might.
I love Scott, but I don't think so.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, but you say you want a keynote speaker. Okay, we'll leave that to Pamela and Charles.
Scott didn't do too well in the general election.
I thought the attorney
so-
general was
Okay.
good.
Let's go. What do you think of this, of the schedule so far? And please keep in mind that we still don't know what the schedule of the, for the National Convention delegate selection process is. I spoke with John Lazar who's the co-chair of that, and he says they haven't come up with a time yet. Also, please keep in mind that the voting for the delegates to the National Convention has got to go up till around 9 o'clock, right? Because of the Sabbath. Some people, actually, can't vote until sundown, and there's not gonna be that much time. Like, when does the sun go, somebody can Google this quickly, when does the sun go down on April 18th? Yes, next year. Yes, John?
7:49. I have no idea that.
7:49? So we're basically only giving those people who, only what, maybe an hour and what, 11 minutes after sunrise to vote?
I agree with you.
Or do we have to keep the polls open till 10? Well, that's up to the delegate selection vote. Chuck?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that 2:30 to 3 o'clock speeches by citywide candidates. One by April 18th, there's still gonna be challenges. They're really not gonna have any certified from the Board of Elections. We still don't have the certified candidates determined. And a half an hour, I can't even imagine, and basically, as we've seen before at these events, people are starting to have a tendency to run out the door in the last hour. They're pretty ground down, that we might wanna use that time more constructively by expanding maybe some of the other categories.
Or maybe you could swap that into the 10:30 to 12 slot, since we're not using
You could, but I still have a problem of people getting up that are under challenge, maybe with their ballot or something else, and they haven't been certified by the Board of Election as, put forth as a candidate, so.
So perhaps if they're challenged, then we just wouldn't invite them to speak, but those who have no challenges, perhaps they can speak.
But I think if we're only giving a half an hour, I just don't think it's that major of a,
Yeah, no, I was thinking we were talking about moving it up to the 10:30 hour.
well, we don't know, if there's 60 candidates, a minute's not much. It doesn't give a lot of respect to anybody running for delegate to give them less than a minute out of office.
Also,
See, why can't we talk about two positions?
Also keep in mind, the National Convention Delegate Selection Committee may come in with a schedule saying that the delegate caucuses may not start until, 2 o'clock or 3, depending on how long the voting's going on. So we would have to adjust our schedule. Maybe the convention would start later on in the morning. But Chuck, what you're saying is that we should just completely delete the speeches by citywide candidates?
I think you either do it right or you don't do it, and I can't see in a half an hour with the fact that they're not certified, I don't consider that right, so I'm just suggesting you don't do it.
So that's just candidates and not already the incumbents?
Yeah, well, they're candidates.
No, they gotta be candidates.
We already had the elected officials is gonna be speaking. Are they gonna have another opportunity at the same time as the candidates? Or is that just gonna be two separate?
Well, Chuck's recommendation carries the day we wouldn't have the speeches of the candidates at all.
I think this would be a great opportunity to have their large speakers to come out and talk to them. There's gonna be a number of people there, there'd just be a great opportunity that we shouldn't wanna miss. I'm thinking what we're talking 2 positions, 2 at-large council?
Well, we would be talking about basically giving a minute or two to at-large council, U.S. Senator, Representative, Delegate to Congress. Is the Attorney General up next year? No? Okay, what else is citywide? That's pretty much it.
Well, you have 4 wards and at large, so I just think that's a very large crowd. I mean, I don't have a problem with candidates putting tables out in a specific area where they can, and they can work the crowd and wear their buttons, but to actually take away from the business that we're there for is, that's right.
Can I give an alternative view, which is, when you're talking about the June primary, we're talking about Robert White's position, we're talking about the shadow rep, and we're talking about shadow senator, and that's it, and so. So we've just gone from a bunch of people down to, regardless of how many people run against Robert White, right now, that's a small number. Typically, the shadow positions don't generate dozens of people, because you gotta get thousands of signatures, and it's an unpaid job. So I don't think we're looking at more than a half a dozen people at the most, so I'm not really
Yeah.
worried about the
That's true,
time.
Joe.
Because even if we gave them a couple minutes.
It's a
That's it.
convention killer. If you move it up and incorporate it up higher in the day when people are still there, but at the end, I'm not even staying for that. It's just not, and I don't know how many we will, because we know it's not a dynamic, and I do think we're short on every one of our time slots. I don't know why we're trying to jam everything in.
But it's 9 to 10, right?
Yes.
Just my experience of putting together conferences, the time allotment is relatively narrow.
Excuse me.
The time allotment is relatively narrow, and there isn't any fungibility for people to walk around to get from one event to another. So chances are that most of these things are gonna start basically cascading late. And so I would suggest, I'm not gonna argue about the content of each session, but I would suggest that between sessions, you have to have some fungibility of
Right, yeah,
about 15
yeah.
minutes, because the convention center is so big that just people, hitting the restroom or whatever, things aren't gonna start on time, not like that.
Good.
So you may end up not finishing until 5 o'clock.
Right. Well, I said these times were not written in stone, it's just the order of the thing. Well, is it the consensus that we just eliminate, speeches by, our citywide? No, it's not? Okay, so we're gonna actually have a vote on this.
So we need a motion to vote on.
Well, I can just call, how many, just a show of hands, how many of you think there should be some place in the state convention program, run a show, that gives citywide candidates an opportunity to address the convention? Raise your hand. One, two, three, four. Not the wards. Not the wards, citywide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Bo, are you voting? 10. Bo, are you voting? Okay, once again, here. How many of you feel that there should be, at least at some point during the state convention, an opportunity for the citywide candidates on the June 2nd DC Democratic primary ballot, an opportunity to address the convention? Raise your hand.
Just
citywide.
Did he say
Just
citywide?
Just citywide.
Make your motion second.
Okay, how many of you are opposed to that? Okay, it's overwhelming.
I just wanted to include the ward as well.
Now that's,
Now we're getting into.
Because this is a state convention, they have an opportunity to address their individual wards, the ward organizations. Mhm.
We don't want them to buy a page in that book, too.
Is that a motion?
Is
that a motion?
Okay, then I'll put a motion on the floor.
Okay, so, all right, Linda's motion, she feels that the ward candidates, ward Democratic candidates should also be given an opportunity to address the convention. How many of you in favor of that? Okay, how many are opposed? How many are opposed? Most of you didn't even vote on that. Okay, let's try it again, all right? How many of you are in favor of having ward candidates address the convention? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many of you are opposed? Okay, it fails. All right. In terms of the at-large candidates, and Chuck, you're right. If it's later on in the day, some folks may not even be around if it's at the end. So we may incorporate that into an earlier part of the convention. Just want to make sure, is it the consensus of this group that if presidential candidates cannot attend our convention to address us in person, that we will permit them to submit videos to be played at the convention?
Well, how about surrogates?
Well, that's another thing, will we permit surrogates?
I think surrogates should be up to the approval on an individual basis, because if, you know, I'm trying to think of one of the, if Elizabeth Warren sends, you know, some top level person who's a draw in their own right, then I think we'd all like to hear from that person. If they send some low level staffer, then no. Right, like, so again, going back to like the original.
Registered, you can come to the convention.
Like, going back to the original goal of the convention, right, which is to put on, not to put too fine a point on it, is to put on a good show and raise a bunch of money. If they send a high-level surrogate, if Bernie Sanders sends Susan Sarandon, who I can't stand, but would be a name, I think we would say yes. If they sent, again, legislative director from the congressional office, no. Because Susan Sarandon would be a draw.
Can we just say subject to
So-
approval?
Yeah, good.
Rather than to be concerned about who they might send, why not just do the video? And I say that because they did that at the DNC meeting in San Francisco, and it was very successful. Those candidates that couldn't be there were there by way of video, and people listened and looked at them.
Personally, I'm not gonna show up for a video, but if one of the campaigns is tweeting out some high-level surrogate is gonna be there, and I'm seeing that on social media walking around DC, and I have whatever the admission cost is to go, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm talking about potential draws, that's it, is what gets people in this room.
Yeah, I kinda, back what Bo said, I think saying the video is an incentive not to come. And if we want representation, true representation, and we want to show that the candidates are serious about the District of Columbia, we need to have something in place to make it an incentive for them to come. Or like Bo said, have that surrogate that's at a particular level.
Yeah, as long as it's subject to approval, to me, I wanna take a selfie with that person, and I'm not gonna do that with a video.
Okay, so is the consensus?
And how many surrogates will we want to send? Because by the time we have this convention, how many candidates will be left?
One or two.
Maybe three or more.
So, excuse me, is it the consensus that we don't want videos? Correct?
Yes.
We don't want videos.
Correct.
Okay, no videos. But Bo, how can we veto a presidential candidate's surrogate? How can we tell?
Yeah, I'm wondering how we say
we're not-
no.
Charles?
Easy.
I know it's.
So, like, we need to approach this that we're not begging.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're a presidential candidate, you need to be here. And if you can't be here, you need to send somebody of high level. And if you don't, we're gonna hold you accountable for that. If you try to send us some flunky, we're gonna point that out a lot.
But I'm Bernie Sanders, I can't make it, but I want to be represented by a DC high school student.
No.
Wow.
But
Absolutely inappropriate. Why does he have to involve?
This is a tough road. Huh? Well.
Don't insult me is the answer.
I agree.
Don't insult correct, and to the point is, I'm more concerned that the presidential candidate be president. At some point, I just think they just need to respect DC and come themselves. And so my vote would be no for a surrogate as well.
They're gonna be living here 4 years.
You're not for any surrogate at all.
Not at all.
You're for a surrogate depending on.
I'm for a high level surrogate.
High level surrogate.
That achieves our goals.
And that means we're gonna have to have a vote. Okay, we're gonna have to vote. But first of all, let's decide. We've already the consensus is that no video. You got that? How many of you are in favor of having surrogates, period?
Wait.
Subject to approval.
Subject to anything, yeah. Subject to something.
Subject to something, okay. Subject to approval. How many of you for surrogates?
This incorporates both.
Okay, how many of you are opposed to surrogates? We get surrogates. Okay.
We get good surrogates.
We get surrogates.
Can we vote on videos next?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I think that the invitation to come should be framed in such a way where it's clear that it's for the candidate.
Yes.
At which point we follow up with the candidate and they're saying, well, we have a conflict or whatever, can we send somebody else? We should be clear about, you know, how we're gonna ask, like, who are you sending? Okay, and so, I know I know it takes a little bit of tact, but I don't think that the initial approach should say you or a surrogate.
I agree
It
with
should
that.
say you,
Yeah.
and then if they suggest sending Susan Sarandon
Yeah,
or somebody
okay.
like that, then we can have the executive committee can have a conversation about that. But don't give them the option up front, because most of the time, they'll send somebody else, just like they'll send a video.
Okay. So Charles and Claudette, y'all got that? Because the invitation will be coming from the state committee's office, right? So you got that, okay. Let's go to, how do we pay for this convention? Well, first of all, if the convention, since we're having delegate selection on the same time, that helps in terms of the cost. These are clear, these are just recommendations. How do you feel about asking each delegate to pay a registration fee? What's your feeling about that?
It's okay.
Hmm?
At $20, it's okay.
$20, okay. And that, but also I think that each ward organization should come up with some mechanism for subsidizing the high school students. Right? Because $20 is a stretch for high school students.
Well, you can have the student senior price, right?
Well, that's true too, yeah. But, yes.
Signature alternative, if they don't wanna come up with $20, I mean, that, to me, that is the way to solve the we're charging money issue, which we did with the other thing. So like, let's say you had to get 20 signatures instead of paying $20, then you could be a delegate. I guess that's, would be my answer to paying $20, if people wanna go that route.
That sounds a little
Well, it's cumbersome, it's just.
cumbersome.
What did the signatures do?
Yeah.
They have to show the 20 people, so they should run. I mean, that's what any signature thing is about, so.
I mean, do you honestly think that this is too much of an ask, you know, like for each delegate to come up with $20? Yes.
So we're gonna ask people who wanna be delegates to pay $500 and then
Oh,
all.
no, that's electoral college candidates.
Yeah.
Have an option of either paying $500 to get on the ballot or going out and getting 400 signatures. But but for delegates, once you are chosen by the award organization, you're asked to pay a $20 registration fee. Yes.
Well, that's the first qualifier I've heard as far as who could be a delegate from each of the ward organization.
You gotta pay your $20.
But again, we have high school students, and the high school students are from very economic classes. I don't know if $20 is too much. I know if we're going for seniors, $20 is a lot.
Yeah.
Then we're not giving a box lunch. We're expecting people to come with a brown bag, or go out to a restaurant. It's really challenging. And I do think we have to, if you wanna do a fee, for that matter, we should have stayed at 100. We gave away $2,500 right there, dropping to 80. But the point being, either lower the fee or.
Okay.
I just think it should be, it's fine for everybody in this group because we're all activists, but then we go out and get 80 people. And I know we have trouble enough getting $20 for everybody for a Kennedy's King dinner, let alone this convention. So I would suggest that if we do have to charge, it should be less just in consideration or come up with another mechanism.
For about $10.
If that's better,
Yes.
I think you had.
Oh, yeah.
Just quickly, on your previous chart, you showed a continental breakfast.
Yeah.
You showed a box lunch. My question is, who's paying for that? Is the state committee paying for that?
I said to delete that.
Oh.
Because if we go to the convention center, we have to use their vendors, and their vendors are really expensive.
Yeah, yeah. You
So
said
there would be no box lunches or anything like that.
Okay.
People would just be recommended that you bring your own lunch.
Phil, what's the budget for this overall?
That's the thing, in terms of the budget.
Is the convention center, charging us anything?
Charles?
So, so far, we've got confirmation from two spaces. The convention center Center and UDC. And either one is gonna cost at least $8,000. At least. And that's for an all-day, 10-hour, 12-hour use of this.
I think we should increase the fee. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
This goes back to my earlier statement about the size of the room that we're in. I think that if anybody's gonna be a delegate, there shouldn't be a fee for delegates, but we should try to generate a program that is interesting enough that some of the public would like to attend, and those folks would have to pay a ticket fee. If Michelle Obama is gonna be our keynote, if we are gonna have a high-level surrogate or one of the presidential candidates, there are 11 or 8 I-95 primaries on April 28th. I think there are still gonna be a reasonable number of candidates in this fight on April 18th. One of those being Maryland, they're all gonna be nearby 10 days ahead of time. And I don't think it's fair to have delegates pay, but I do absolutely think that if somebody else wants to come, they should. And so I think that would be the place to generate a revenue, is to increase the size of a room, and hopefully that won't change the expenditure much at the convention center to where you can admit the public as well with a ticket.
Okay.
Just a point of information, sorry, go ahead.
No.
So the public that would be paying, those would be the people that you're trying to get in to vote to be a delegate?
They would also be participating in that election, because any Democrat can do that, but they're not a delegate to the convention. Right, remember there's two things going on. There's the national delegate selection process, which any Democrat can vote for, and then there's the convention.
Okay,
And-
so you're not talking about telling the people who are coming to vote that they have to pay a fee?
Not to vote.
Oh,
The voting piece is separate.
okay,
If
that
they
we
then wanna
would
come
not
into the
pay.
big room where all the cool speeches are, then they would have to pay.
Kind of an amusement pass. Yeah.
No, I can take you to a show. The business of the meeting is being done by the state delegates. And the state delegates, the ones that they're saying 20 shouldn't pay to do the business of the meeting. If somebody wants to come watch the meeting after they've cast their vote for a national delegate, that should have a cost associated to it, as a fundraiser for the party.
So, and I guess this is more to Chuck, since he's the board chair who's here, but as an example, if the ward said that they want, let's say it was $10, they could pick that up for anybody that's a delegate, then in essence, the ward organization would pay that money as opposed to an individual, or the individual could pay if they wanted to, but that way, we're not saying that you actually have to pay, we're saying that, you know, if the ward organizations decide to pay for those, that $10, then they can pay it. So-
Well, I'm not gonna guarantee underwriting it, but.
Exactly, so
No,
that's
no,
why I'm
really,
asking.
what I would suggest, is I don't wanna turn this into a poll tax thing.
Exactly.
But, I think in most cases, at least, and I can only speak for our ward, but I think it hits on some others. I think if we requested or asked, would the delegate, you know, part of if you wanna be a delegate, we would ask that you pay $20, but if you are unable to pay the $20, pay as much as you can or don't pay anything at all. And I think probably maybe we would lose 15-20%, and we'd look for 20, actually, it's, in a way, we'd look for people, if we're not looking for people that find out too much money, that they're not getting a full representation of our ward. But I think we ask for the $20 as a donation, if they do, if not.
Okay.
So you would just change the word pay to donate?
Yes.
And that way it would be.
Recommended
Ask-
donation.
recommended
Ask
don-
for a donation of
Okay.
$20.
So,
Do we have consensus on that? Does everyone agree with Chuck's recommendation that we, ask for a donation of $20 per delegate? It's fine?
Yeah.
Okay. At least $20. We may have a delegate who wants to put a couple of zeros behind. What about the second recommendation, that we ask each ward and affiliated organization to contribute?
I think that's fine.
At least that much.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right.
Can we also recommend they buy an ad that would then, they might be able to put in more? You know, some wards have it.
We don't even know what the rate is yet, but sure, you can ask.
I feel like we're doing this backwards.
Okay. Well, flip us did.
Well, I think we need a budget first.
I know.
And then figure out how much we need to ask from each of the different categories of attendees. to make the budget?
Well, the next slide deals with the subcommittees that need to be set up, and one is finance.
I have a
You are right, yes.
One question, are we saying the candidate must pay $500 on submit petition, or we striking submit petition?
That's only for the electoral
No, this
college.
says for each candidate must pay.
If the electoral college.
If the electoral
Oh,
college
college,
plan,
okay,
and it was
Sorry.
selected,
Okay.
this is an old slide.
Okay, thank you.
You're right, we, at the next one, we'll talk about the budget. Let's go to, we need to set up subcommittees now. Okay. I had originally recommended that the goal, that the fundraising goal for the state convention be $50,000, that we would hope to profit, but Linda feels that that amount is too low. What's the feeling?
I think that, yeah, I'm happy to volunteer for the fundraising part, but I think that between the people who are running for president and the other issue groups that wanna pay to be part of this, that we should be able to raise the money. I mean, and it'd be nice if we knew that it was 8,000 and 3,000, whatever, but, you know, it's not gonna cost us 50,000 to put this thing on, so if we set it as a goal, we would have to make money. And the idea is that people are donating to the idea that we're gonna all go to the convention, right? I mean, we want a lot of people from DC to go, so that's what this is for.
Okay, as a goal, what are you recommending an amount?
I like the 50 minutes.
You like the
Easy number.
50,000? Do I hear
Yeah.
75, do I hear, what, John?
As net or
Well,
gross?
is, I'm, you know, is that Debbie Downer or whatever it is? I think through the funding, we'll get through the $500 and through the donations we get from the delegates. Looks like it'll probably end up being anywhere probably from 18 to 20, possibly 18,000. That would be an optimal. And then I think the most that we get out of a catalog would be 25. I mean, that would be an extremely successful catalog, but 50 could be a possibility, 45, 50,000.
Or maybe we can sell the back cover of the Bloomberg for 25,000.
Yeah.
You right with that? Excuse me.
I think this Conley printing spoke it all of who we should get on that back covers, who's printing the catalog.
And also keep in mind, we have to use a union printer.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So, is this money gonna be used to subsidize people going to the convention, national convention, or is it going into the general fund?
It can't subsidize people.
Well, my question is, what is the purpose of this fundraiser? What is our goal?
Well, I mean, of course, this is going to help with the state committee's, national convention expenses.
So, we might make that a goal, like to pay for the hotel or pay for food or whatever. Or, I mean, whatever it is we can do,
Right.
if that's what we're gonna do with this money, and then that will help us set the goal of how much we need to raise.
Okay. I think that, you know, isn't the slogan now, we're on the road to Milwaukee, that people understand if they ask, well, why am I spending money for any of this? Well, we have national convention expenses, so that's one of the objectives of the state convention is to raise money. How that's being used specifically for the state is not, it's above my pay grade. Yeah. What we need are people who are willing to chair or co-chair these subcommittees. Oh, before we get into that, platform development. In another slide, which I don't think is on this, my recommendation in terms of platform is that be a 3-month process where the ward organizations would send their planks platform planks to the state committee, and that there be a platform committee that would somehow help, like, meld them, because some of the planks coming from different wards may be very similar, so it's a question of coming up with language that would capture all of that. I know for some wards, there'll be no problem in terms of platforms, like the Ward 8 Democrats passed this platform at our biennial convention just this September. So the Ward 8 Democrats are ready to submit its platform in total. But during January and February and March, the ward organizations and the affiliated organizations would have to send their platform planks to the state committee. And then in April, recommending that the state committee meeting deal with the platform, actually passing the platform that will be considered at the state convention. And if there are some minority planks, there may be one more, there may be some platform out, there may be a platform plank out there dealing with the issue of term limits. Say if that's a majority of the members of the state committee don't vote for that at the April meeting, then if at least 25% of the committee voted for a minority plank, then that plank would be submitted to the state convention to vote in its entirety. What do you think? Yes. You like it? Okay. Will that be okay, that the April meeting of the state committee will specifically deal with platform?
I have to look at our delegate plan.
Okay.
Because we might have some other obligation for the April meeting. Small firms will be doing some platform.
All right, well, okay, let's get into subcommittees. Bo, you are doing
Voting machines.
You're doing voting machines, I guess. Okay.
I have to leave, but I'm gonna do fundraising.
You going to co-chair that for us?
That's what
Okay.
voluntary means.
That's what it means. You're gonna
Co-chair is better than chair, so that's great.
Okay, because you're gonna co-chair fundraising.
Thank you, John, for your service.
Do we still have a platform or not?
Platform, Earl Folks, who's on the, on committee, has already volunteered to co-chair. Is anyone else interested in co-chairing platform? Who is that, Ruth? Is that Ruth?
Yep.
Okay. Ruth, you'll co-chair platform. You'll do logistics? Okay, which includes voting machines, okay.
I'll draw logistics.
Oh, great, okay, so that's Wanda and Bo are doing logistics. Linda, you wanted to go chair souvenir, right?
No, I didn't want to, you asked me.
Okay.
I prefer to assist with several several committees as opposed to sticking to one.
Oh, sure, well, you can do.
But I will definitely help with the souvenir.
Okay, souvenir, okay.
Before others will volunteer.
Can you talk a little bit about what the credentialing is?
Credentialing, as a matter of fact, the credentialing of a committee, it won't be a heavy lift for them because the delegates have to be chosen by the ward organizations. You know, the ward organizations will say these are 80 delegates. So on the day of the convention, it's a matter of just showing up, and your name should be on the list, and you're given your credentials.
That's part of logistics. I think that's part of logistics.
Yeah, yeah.
Programming, just finalizing the schedule, speakers,
Yes,
all that.
yes.
I'd offer to co-chair for that.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, Matt
I'd like to
reports,
join
Ward 6.
Good, huh?
So I'd like to join with programming, because I was gonna ask you.
Okay, wait a minute, hold on, let me get it now. For programming, we have whom?
Matt LaFortune.
Okay. And?
Chair, Andrew,
Renita Carmichael.
Okay, outreach and publicity.
I can help with that.
Ethan, spell your last name, please.
A-R-N-H-E-I-M.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
A-R-N-H-E-I-M.
A-R-N. And that's you, you have, what is it, outreach?
Outreach.
Outreach and publicity, okay. Anyone else?
Elton Brown,
Yes.
I'll assist as well.
Okay.
I have a question, the invitations to potential keynote speakers, what does that fall under?
Program.
Is that programming?
Yes.
Okay. 'Cause
But-
I can work with Pamela on that.
Pamela.
That would be great.
Cool.
So we're gonna be on your committee.
oh, did you have Andrew as co-chair? No co-chair right now.
I have, you say who?
Andrew would like to co-chair.
Oh, Andrew, you want to co-chair
On
which committee?
programming,
Okay.
on the popular program.
Okay, popular program committee.
Right, it is.
In terms of, to be honest about it, you're like, the rules for this really are not going to be that extensive. It's going to be this is a very clean convention. It's not, there shouldn't be any type of, any floor fights over rules or
I think
anything like
we should
that. So we
volunteer.
really don't need it.
We should volunteer the guy who's been doing the parliamentary work at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember his name.
Yeah,
The
we get
rules
Ethan to
is
do
the
it.
parliamentary.
This is his last name.
Kim.
Oh, and by the way, in the very beginning, when we first discussed this at the state committee, it was decided that our vice chair of the committee would chair the convention. Linda is chairing the convention. We need to get to one of those big gavels. One of the big ones. So rules, the credentialing, we said we would fold that into what?
Logistics.
Logistics, okay. So that's pretty much, do any of you see the need for any other subcommittees? Or do you think that pretty much covers it?
I have a question.
So registration, I'm sorry. Apologies.
Yeah.
Registration. So we talked about public, individuals come in, is there a registration that's gonna be set up? Is there gonna be an Eventbrite or something for people to sign in?
That'll be under logistics.
That's under logistics.
You and I are gonna have to figure that one out.
We do it.
All right?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I would just clarify, so logistics will be site management, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So, Bo
So
and
if anybody
Rhonda.
wants to join the ever-growing list of responsibilities of the Logistics and Credentialing Committee, please do so.
So Bo and Wanda, can y'all please write y'all's own job descriptions? Because what we need to do, is now to send out or put on the website, Charles, please, to send out to, not just the members of the state committee, but to all Democrats throughout the city, saying these are the subcommittees and they will be doing this, and if you're interested, to contact these folks.
Okay, on the platform development, you had a pretty clear idea about what the wards were supposed to be doing or what they've already done.
Right.
So if there's a way for you to articulate that,
Okay.
then I could probably clean it up.
All right.
And make sure that it's clear for, all the wards, but you already said that there's some sort of process that's been in play
Okay.
recently, so I'll follow up on that.
All right, terrific. Okay, next thing is, when is our next meeting? We should at least have this one monthly
No, I have a-
meeting from now. Yes.
I have a question, if I may. I heard that there are, or participating organizations, right, that are part of the state committee, they have to pay $200. Does that include that they will have presence, like a table? Is that what their $200 cover? Is there space for tables for candidates for ward, for example, or at large and all of that? Is that
What
something?
does it include?
Yeah, where does that
That's
fall?
something that the logistics committee will come up with.
No, because-
Just ask Bo.
That's right,
That's a
logistics-
fundraising committee.
Yeah,
Fundraising, exactly,
That's what John
because
said.
if anybody wants to be there, I assume
Right.
they're gonna charge them for the table space.
There's gonna need to be a package.
Yeah, there's gonna be a package.
Okay.
Okay, our next meeting now, which will be sometime in mid or late January, what date do you suggest that we meet? This is what, this is a Wednesday night, right?
Mid-January.
Mid-January. What about the third Wednesday in January? Will that work? Would that work for y'all? What is the third Wednesday in January?
It's the Wednesday after Martin Luther King weekend.
What's the date on that?
Look for a date first.
That's the 15th.
Yeah.
We're gonna meet on January the 15th.
Yeah.
That's
That's a
before.
Wednesday.
15, it's a Wednesday.
That's a Wednesday?
In 2020.
Are there alternate
That's-
hearings?
That's before the holiday.
Is that too late?
No,
That's fine.
no. Wanda wants to know, is there an alternate meeting space because parking there was a problem?
Yes.
Huh?
Oh, no, nothing.
I think this year.
Oh,
They aren't playing ball at the stadium. No, I'm not kidding.
so is it consensus that we should find another place to meet? That where parking is better? Okay, I'll work on that.
Parking was hard.
They said parking, the parking was,
It's accessible to the subway stop, that's good. The metro stop.
okay, we'll work on that.
And the time will be still 6:30.
Still 6:30. Anything else, y'all?
I have a
Any,
question.
yeah.
In your budget, did you all identify or carve out, I might have missed it, any opportunities to purchase swag? Like something to elevate the on the road to Milwaukee?
It's under
51 state
logistics.
flags.
They're just jumping everything in logistics and everything. I guess that's something that logistics and fundraising will work out.
Hey, Bo, how about the 51-star flag?
I have those.
Yes.
I asked did they budget purchasing any type of swag to elevate the on the road to Milwaukee, some potential giveaways?
And also
or-
sales too.
Oh, that's still a fundraising committee.
I was gonna say that was.
Fine.
That's John Posey.
That's John Paul. We haven't budgeted anything
Somebody
yet.
needs- Yeah, there's nothing budgeted yet.
There's nothing budgeted yet. Okay, yes.
Here's this copy of souvenir booklet, whoever's on that committee.
All right, is there anything else?
That's Linda.
Is there anything else? Well, I'll let the chair close out. I just want to thank you for coming. Happy
you,
holidays, everything.